Marianne Kovatch, the Associate Program Director for the Blue Ridge Music Center. I'd like to welcome you to the discussion series of Place in the Band, Women in Bluegrass and American Roots Music. This series is part of a project by the Blue Ridge Music Center that began in 2020 to honor the 100th anniversary of women being granted the right to vote. A Place in the Band celebrates the triumphs and explores the struggles faced by women in bluegrass and American roots music. In this discussion series, North Carolina singer, songwriter, and social activist Laurelyn Dossett speaks with women in the music business, including musicians and others involved in music management and promotion roles. Through these conversations, the women share their stories, talking about their role models, mentors, and inspirations, experiences with people they've worked with, issues they've encountered that are specific to women in the industry, changes they've seen over the years, and other parts of their own personal journeys that have helped them to be who they are today. These individual stories show us the collective strength and future possibilities for women in bluegrass and American roots music. I hope you enjoy the series, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, today I'm delighted to introduce you to AMYTHYST KIAH. Amethyst has really made a name for herself in the business over the last couple of years as a solo artist with her band AMYTHYST KIAH and her Chest of Glass, and recently with the Our Native Daughters project. In that project, she wrote a song called Black Myself that was nominated for multiple awards and won Folk Alliance International Song of the Year. It's kind of surprising when you realize that she kind of got into this field accidentally. She signed up for a bluegrass guitar class at East Tennessee State, and the rest is history. I love how her music encompasses so many different forms of American folk music, blues, old-time singer-songwriter, but it's not like she jumps from one to the other. She does them all at once. My name is Laurelyn Dossett, and this is AMYTHYST KIAH.
Oh, can you tell me where we go? And will it be night where we go?
So I wanted to just start with asking you, go to the beginning. Like when did you start playing music? When did you get interested in it? Like what were the beginnings of your musical sparks?
Well, I started playing music, at least I started creating music when I was 13. My parents bought me a guitar, bought me an acoustic guitar. It was a late 80s Fender acoustic. It cost about, I think they paid like $100 for it. So that was kind of the beginning of that. Prior to that, I basically grew up in a house that was just, music was always playing. My dad is really into like studio equipment and speakers and all that kind of stuff. So he had like an integrated amplifier and like these like 4-foot tall 3-way speakers. Like he was really, really into like getting the sound dialed in, and the music would sound like the band was playing right there in your room, right there in the house. So it was really awesome to be able to kind of like grow up hearing that and listen to all different kinds of music too. So, there'd be like the Allman Brothers, there'd be Dolly Parton, there'd be, just Carlos Santana, Prince. There's just all kinds of popular music, and then also like R&B, funk.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a very wide and progressive Southern rock, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I kind of grew up hearing all different kinds of music, and then as time went on, I kind of latched onto MTV and was really into a lot of all the alternative music that was happening at the time, and a lot of the popular music from there. So yeah, I've always had very like eclectic taste with music. So by the time I got my guitar, I was learning a lot of alternative rock songs. I was the big Tori Amos fan and Radiohead fan. The very first song I ever learned on guitar was Green Day, their song "Good Riddance, Time of Your Life," that acoustic song but it was so controversial because they were a punk band and they played an acoustic song that people lost their minds. But I've always been attracted to artists that are willing to take risks to evolve, not necessarily evolve their sound, but like they're going where the sound is taking them, and they're not afraid for people to not like it. You know what I mean? There's always that fear of like, will the fans still like the music? But there's this idea of like kind of following that sound and seeing where it goes, and allowing yourself to like grow and change, because everybody does that. So anyway, those are the kind of, artists I was kind of digging into at the time, people that were willing to take risks to try things. And then my interest in roots-based music really happened about 10 years later, when I started taking courses at East Tennessee State University. I got involved with the Bluegrass Old Time Country Music Studies program. And that was kind of like the beginning of me learning about American roots music and how fundamental it is to all the other music that I was listening to. And also it was a way to be able to play music in an academic environment, to be able to pursue music in a way that really resonated with me. The folk music tradition is about learning by ear and like watching and listening. And that's how I've always played music. So that also was a very, it meant a lot to feel like my way of processing music was validated,
Right.
So yeah.
So what do you think, I want to go back a little farther, what do you think made your parents when you were 13 say, let's put a guitar in her hands?
Well, so they had like this kind of set of goals for me as a kid. They had this idea of, me like making good grades in school and playing some kind of sport, which I did play basketball for a time, and playing an instrument. And it wasn't really hard to get me to want to play an instrument because I loved listening to music. And guitar ended up being the instrument. And then I just became obsessed with it. Because I remember I got the guitar during the summer. And so I barely left my room because I was just so in love with the sound. And
Wow.
it just really opened it just opened a whole new world for me as far as like how I could express myself. Because I was going through, I was 13 and I was going through this, during that, it's that very awkward time in every person's life where, you're not quite sure who you are yet, and you're trying to figure stuff out. And I kind of saw myself kind of leaning more into more art related kinds of things and less sports related things. So I kind of was just starting to kind of transition into like another way of spending my time and expressing myself. And the guitar and music really like encapsulated the best way for me to like express myself and how I was feeling. So,
Right. So when you went to ETSU, did you go there for that program, or did you go there and kind of fall into that program?
I mean, I fell into it because, me and my dad moved to Johnson City in 2006.
Okay.
My mother passed away when I was 17. I went to the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga for like one semester. And then we decided to move to Johnson City to kind of start all over again, really.
I understand.
It was just too difficult to be there. And to like stay in the house and, everything. So yeah, we just moved to Johnson City to start over, and I transferred. I was like, well, that's the college that's there, so I'm going to transfer. It was really that simple. It wasn't a whole lot of thought put into it. So I remember that my first semester there, I had decided that I was only going to take one class because I needed some time to kind of get settled into this new place and clear my head. And so I ended up I was like, well, let me see what kind of music classes they have, because I'd taken classical guitar when I was in high school for like about a year. So I was thinking about taking a classical guitar class, and I was like, what really kind of turned me off was the way that classical guitar, the way you're required to learn classical guitar, again, at the time for me was like, well, I literally can listen and watch and hear a recording and I can learn that way, but that's not what's accepted in classical music. And I understand why now, but at the time I had a little bit of an angst about it. So I was like, well, I'm not going to do this. I found a bluegrass group guitar, and I'm like, I have no idea what that means. I had no idea what bluegrass. I mean, all I knew about was like the Beverly Hillbillies. That's like all I knew about bluegrass music. I had zero knowledge about it. And I was like, well, why the heck not? I'll just do it. I mean, it's not gonna, I'll just try it. I called and talked to Jack Tottle, who was the founder of the program, and was still teaching there at the time. And he was teaching the class, and I talked with him, and I really liked him. He was really open and warm and welcoming to me. I remember I asked him, do I need to like learn how to sight read or learn any sheet music? And he just laughed and said, no, this is a oral tradition. So the thing that I had been doing for the past 10 years, which was look at guitar tablature, listen, and watch to learn how to play stuff, was like validated, and that was really important for me. So I took the group guitar class and I really liked it. Then eventually I took some other courses. I took an American folk music class that really pulled me into like learning about the roots of the music and like, the how influential West African culture and music really was influenced not just the blues, but also country music, and various kinds of old time music, fiddle music, banjo music, and that was, and at that same time, I also learned about the Carolina Chocolate Drops, and the way that they did old time music was just so invigorating. And so it like breathed new life into the music. So anyway, so that's kind of how I ended up, getting into the program. Also, I auditioned for band, and people were like really responsive to it. And my dad had always been encouraging, saying that, he thinks I have a really good voice, but like I was incredibly like shy about it. So I didn't really perform. But I was encouraged by my dad and also by some faculty at the school. And I did it, and then things kind of went from there. So.
That's awesome.
John Henry had a little woman. Her name was Polly Ann. When John was sick and he could not work, Polly drove steel like a man, oh Lord. Polly drove steel like a man. Polly drove steel like a man, oh Lord.
Well, the premise of this, the conversation, I guess, and the symposium, or part of it is, the idea that in bluegrass, or it's not just in any field really, but in traditional music, I mean, there've always been women playing it. We falsely think of that as also, being white women, which is not true either. But we have, there are lots of preconceived notions and sometimes barriers to working in the field. Have you experienced? I mean, what have you had barriers as you've moved through the music, moved through the career?
There was one instance in particular that I think was probably the first time I was knowingly not chosen for something, because at the very least, me being a woman, me being a person of color might have also been a factor, but I knew for a fact that it was related to me being a woman. There's a concert series that happens in Southwest Virginia. I don't want to say specifically who and what it was, because I don't want to throw this artist under the bus, because I I don't know how much they even knew about what was going on. They had a manager, so I don't want to like start anything with anyone because I don't even know if this person even knows what happened. But there's a promoter in Southwest Virginia that I've worked with for years, and she was going to book me to open for a Americana artist that has a pretty good following, and she's booked me for the series before. So she reached out to me and asked if I was available for this date to open for this artist. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. Well, the management got back to her because they asked her to send a short list of artists to her to open for this person. And I was like at the top of her list. She showed me that I could play with the band, I could play solo. So when they got back to her, they said, well, we want a male performer to open. And and it's like, and she was really mad. And in fact, she's also had issues just in general, like when there's a female headliner, that selling tickets is not quite as easy, even though the women are just as talented as anybody else coming through. So that was an ongoing issue that she was having anyway. But just knowing that like all the work that I've done and like the kind of following that I've been able to garner in the area, and the fact that like this person, their management just wrote me off completely because I was a woman. And it's like, what? And I think, how many other times have I not, how many other people have actually have done that, have made that decision that, oh, well, we've got enough. And because I've heard stories from other women where that actually like booked their own shows, where they would say that promoters would literally message it back and say, well, we have enough women on the bill already.
Right. Like it matters. Like anybody would ever say that, like, we've got enough men for this show.
Right. They never say that. There's this really great, this really great Instagram account called Book More Women. And they, what they do is they take like flyers from festivals, although I don't know exactly what they're doing now because festivals have kind of, aren't really happening at the moment. But when festival season was out, they would take the flyer, show the original flyer, and then pan over, you swipe left, and then it'll show how many women are actually on the bill. And it kind of blew my mind, like how many festivals still only, like, they book like maybe 4 female-led acts, and then everything else is men. And it's kind of like, okay, like, so yeah. Anyway, so it's definitely an issue.
It's like a novelty thing. We gotta book in a little novelty for to keep things interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really been interesting that, and I don't know, and I think it has a lot to do with just the genre that I guess I'm classified to be in, but Americana and folk festivals and venues, I honestly feel like in those genres and those scenes, it seems like there's a way more acceptance of female acts being on the bill. At least in the experience that I've had thus far. There's just been a tremendous push, especially with, organizations like Americana Fest. There's like this huge push to like recognize women and their talents, and so yeah, I feel like in the circles that I've been in, I've been fortunate to be on bills with amazing female artists, and so I feel like, but I feel like in other genres, it appears like a lot of those problems are still kind of persisting a little bit more. But not to say that there's not any issues in the genre that that we're in now, but I get a sense that, like, generally speaking, I've had very pleasant experiences with promoters and with, other artists. And there seems to be this readiness and openness that's been happening, and slowly but surely also people of color. That's also that's a whole other, that's like a whole other project in itself, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, but I don't know if it feels like things are slowly starting to move in the right direction for all of that stuff. So,
Right. Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I wanted to go back to when you were first learning about you were already immersed in all kinds of music and all genres of music from your childhood and your dad and just your interests, and then you get up to ETSU and you learn about just more of this broad folk music or roots music or whatever you want to call it. Who were some of it? They don't have to all be women. They can be men and women, obviously. But who were some of the people from the past, that were really interesting to you and really feeding where you've ended up today?
Well, gosh, I mean, there's the Carter family. That was one of the first. There's actually, I think, "Bury Me Under the Weeping Willow" was one of like the first songs that, one of the first old time songs that I learned, and one of the first ones that I learned to play for in the old time pride band at ETSU. So
Awesome.
Yeah. So the Carter family, Vera Hall, who was a singer from Livingston, Alabama. And she had an incredible voice. Elizabeth Cotton is another one. Ola Belle Reed. Belle Reed's another one, another big one. Yeah.
Her name comes up a lot as I've been talking to women in this process. You talked about learning about the chocolate drops at that time. Like how important do you think, their coming on the scene was to you're kind of going, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, like I mentioned before, when I first started getting into the music and kind of finding my place, like I took the bluegrass guitar class, and then I kind of got interested in like playing Celtic guitar. I was a big Lorena McKennitt fan, so I didn't really know anything about like traditional Celtic music. All I knew is like I loved how it sounded, and Celtic rhythm guitar looked and sounded fun, and so I learned how to do that. And then I was in Celtic band for a couple of years, and then old time is what I ended up really kind of gravitating luck into. And I think, again, without like, I know in some of this I'm being kind of vague only because I don't want to like, I'm trying not to like I'm not trying to like call anybody out or anything. So that's why I'm kind of being a little vague about some of my descriptions. But within the genres of music there, I felt like old time was more, and the people that played old time, I felt like the people that played old time were a little more accepting to me being part of it. Because every person that I met that we really jived with, they were all in old time. They were all playing old time, and I was kind of like, and it also happened. A lot of them also like they weren't from this area. They were actually from like other places. So. And we were all kind of starting from scratch, like, yeah, man, I don't know anything about old time music, but it's just really cool and we want to learn. So I kind of like fell in with like that kind of group of people. And I was just like, well, so that was a big thing. So once I took the American folk music class, which was taught by Dr. Ted Olson, who's put out some pretty amazing box sets. He put out the Johnson City Sessions box set and the Bristol Sessions box set, which I think Bristol Sessions box set, I think the liner notes got nominated for a Grammy like a few years back. So wow. He's literally like an encyclopedia, a walking encyclopedia about roots music. It's pretty incredible. But anyway, so once I started taking that class and understanding, like, even though in my entire life I've usually been like the only Black person in the room, if I was going to be participating in a program and playing a music, I needed to I needed to hold on to something. I needed to have some sort of sense of belonging if I was going to stick with it. And when I came across Carolina Chocolate Drops, and in conjunction with learning about roots music and seeing how much West African folk traditions played into the music, and the fact that country music and bluegrass music and any music that is deemed as being white music is actually like, you know, a multicultural music, and that it's something that all Americans can and should be able to partake in without feeling like they don't belong. And so seeing the Carolina Chocolate Drops and also being around people that like finding a group of people that were welcoming me in, all of that kind of just, I mean, that was like the perfect storm of like, okay, I'm going to go down this path. And I also felt like with old time music, like with a lot of the singing that happened in old time music, like murder ballads and all that kind of stuff, like I really just something about it was really moving to me. And I loved the very distinct voices that were recorded, particularly in field recordings.
You know, what's feeding you now? Who's inspiring you? And where are you headed next?
Yeah, well, yeah, with the pandemic, I mean, it's definitely, there's definitely been like some ups and downs this year for sure. I mean, I think we're all experiencing that. I think one of the things that became very obvious to me is how tightly I'd connected my identity to being a touring musician. It wasn't until, you know, I think it was like the second week in March, I had just actually come back from a trip playing at the Stevens Center, and I came back, obviously watched the news, heard everything that was happening, was shutting things down. You know, emails came in from my booking agent saying, hey, this festival's canceled, this video's canceled, this entire tour for this month and a half is canceled. Like, so there was 2 weeks of just like anxiety and like not sleeping well and like just not really, just that uncertainty of like, okay, well now what, you know? And within that time, I ended up getting probably about a month or so off just from anything. And once things started to kind of solidify where it's like, okay, people are going online. So a lot of these gigs have been salvaged via, you know, virtual stuff, although it doesn't pay as much, but it's still going to be something. You know, all that was starting to take care of itself. And then I also had an opportunity to actually like really kind of settle in and like kind of, I guess, and rediscover myself in ways, like things that I have interests in that I just kind of kept putting off because I was on the road. Being able to like, you know, create a vibe and decorate my apartment, but now I'm kind of channeling that into the house now that I've moved. But there was just so many self-care related things that I wasn't really denying myself, like having a better sleeping habits, like, you know, eating better and more consistently, eating better food more consistently, being physically active, taking care of my wellness. Like all of these things were things I was actually able kind of like focus on. And so what it let me know is that like, I need to sometimes just like take a month off from everything. Like I need to incorporate that time off, to recharge. Cause I was really running myself into the ground. And I was so used to doing that I didn't realize that I maybe I shouldn't do that, you know?
I understand.
But it's one of those things. Yeah. So then as time has gone on, you know, I got a record deal. I've finally finished recording my album in July. I worked with a producer named Tony Berg out in Sound City Studios in LA. And we'll do an official announcement of the label when the single's out. So I've kind of not really been like officially announcing it yet, because I think
Okay.
it's going to be all part of the campaign. But yeah, so with that happening, like that's been a huge highlight of
Right.
this entire thing, because it's like I'm going to get to put out some new music, you know, next year. So
Talk about our native daughters.
oh man, well, our native daughters was such an incredible thing to be a part of. You know, Rhiannon Giddens reached out to me and Layla and Allison to write songs with the banjo and to sing about the transatlantic slave trade. And I mean, what really made me latch on to this, despite obviously like who asked me to do it, which is a very obvious thing, and the way that she expressed this was so powerful, I couldn't not do it. But the fact that like this was an opportunity for me to really revisit some things that I had read about in history, and that I'd contemplated on, and that I helped inform me as, you know, as a Black woman and as an American, to understand just how devastating the transatlantic slave trade was, and also the fact that it is a shared trauma between Blacks and whites. So to be able to like, and it was just at a time when I had writer's block pretty bad, and to be able to have the opportunity to write songs about something outside of myself was, I mean, it was very scary, but it also was something that like, I was like, I have to do this, you know? And it was above and beyond what I expected it to be. It really gave an opportunity to really do something like for our ancestors. I mean, thinking of what's happened in the past as being ancestral, and as something that's also, you know, generationally passed down, like the trauma of what happened being generationally passed down, and that all of us in that group had experienced in one way or another that trauma being passed down, and like how we were also, even though this is also very informative and in like an educational project, this is also a project where we were all like healing as well. And
What
this was yeah.
What significance do you place on it being for women? It could have been men and women Black banjo players, but it was for women Black banjo players.
Well, I know, and I wholeheartedly agree with this sentiment. When Rhiannon decided to pick 4 Black women to do this, it's symbolic of the fact that in our society, that the Black female body, if you want to look at a hierarchy of treatment, that the Black female body has faced some pretty terrible abuse historically, from being, you know, being raped on the plantation, to bear children, being to, you know, to today, where having in modern society, where a Black woman's body, if it's curvy, if you have a butt, if you have thighs, then some people see that as you're fat, or you're ugly, or you're barbaric. Like, just the Black female body has been through a lot. And to be able to kind of, and she speaks to this a lot better than I do, but
I think you're doing just fine.
I think I think it was important to show how important the strength and resilience of Black women is and can be. And so I guess that's that's the best way to put it. But
did you
I think, yeah.
And you how did you experience that though? But I mean, that some of what you're talking about is what the audience experienced as the four of you being the face of this project. But what was it like for you? I know Chest of Glass was 4 white guys were in your band, you know?
Yeah.
And you've worked with lots of men and women, and so to be suddenly
in a
situation with these 4 women, what was that like?
Well, what's different? What was different for me about this was that to be able to sit down and actually talk about our experiences and not feel like we're giving a lecture or like we're teaching somebody something. It's like we get it, you know, and a lot of people don't realize that in the field that we're in, it's not, there are certain things that some people have not experienced and won't understand. And not to say there's anything wrong with people not experiencing certain things, but to be able to sit down and have a very, very specific discussions about our race and how we've been treated because of our race and how we were able to overcome that is a very specific kind of conversation. And to be able to have that, and to have that moment of like totally understanding each other's experience without it feeling like, I don't know, like, I don't want to say like, not like, I guess, without it feeling like you're kind of like on display and like it's kind of this sympathetic story time kind of thing.
Right.
It's more like everybody gets it. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. So yeah, I mean, it's just a very different thing that I didn't realize that I ever needed because I had never really had it to begin with. So, you know.
So what do you think now? Do you think you guys will try to do that? You think you ladies will get back together again?
We are talking about like, you know, doing another album at some point. So can't really say when or how, but we have talked about that and we're interested in doing that. So, so yeah, hopefully that'll be something that'll be happening.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again for your time. And this was delightful.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you later.
All right. See ya.